Harvard University was alive with excitement. Students rushed through the halls carrying notebooks, and professors discussed problems in every corner. A special challenge had been announced, one that promised fame and recognition for anyone who could solve it. The puzzle was famous for being almost impossible. Scholars from all over the world came to try their luck. For weeks, teams of experts studied the problem. They wrote formulas, drew charts, and argued about possible solutions. Still, no one could solve it. Outside the grand university, in a small, quiet house, a boy named Samir lived with his father. His father worked as a janitor at Harvard. Every day, he cleaned classrooms, offices, and laboratories. People rarely noticed him, but Samir always did. He admired his father's hard work and honesty. Samir loved puzzles and riddles more than anything. While other children played outside, he spent hours solving brain teasers, reading old math books, and practicing problems. One afternoon, as Samir was arranging his small bookshelf, he noticed unusual activity outside. Professors and students hurried past, carrying papers and talking excitedly. Their faces were full of concern and curiosity. Samir asked his father, "Dad, why is everyone running around?" His father smiled gently. "There is a very difficult puzzle, Samir. Harvard's best minds are trying to solve it. No one has succeeded yet." Samir's eyes sparkled. "A puzzle? I want to see it," he said. His father shook his head. "It is very hard, son. Only trained experts can understand it. Maybe you should focus on your studies for now." But Samir could not stop thinking about the puzzle. That night, when the house was quiet and the lights in the university had dimmed, he sneaked out to the janitor's office. He knew that sometimes professors threw away old papers and drafts. Samir searched carefully and found a copy of the puzzle tucked under a pile of discarded papers. He sat on the floor and opened it. The puzzle was full of numbers, strange symbols, and patterns. At first, it looked confusing. Samir frowned, but then he smiled. "It is tricky, but I can solve it," he whispered to himself. Unlike the professors, Samir did not rush. He did not try to memorize formulas or force complicated methods. Instead, he read every line slowly. He looked for patterns, repeated numbers, and hidden connections. He drew circles and lines on scrap paper. He wrote small notes in the margin. Hours passed, but he kept working. His father, checking on him quietly, asked, "Are you still working, Samir?" "Yes, Dad. I think I am close to the answer," Samir replied. His voice was calm but full of excitement. The next morning, Harvard was louder than usual. Professors were frustrated. Teams gathered in study rooms, trying new methods, but nothing worked. Some said the puzzle was impossible. Others argued with each other. One professor even suggested, maybe the puzzle is just a test to see who can think differently, but no one will actually solve it. Meanwhile, Samir woke early, his mind fresh and focused. He looked at his notes from the night before. Slowly, a pattern became clear. A tiny detail that others had ignored stood out to him. It was simple but powerful. He drew a final diagram, connected the lines, and wrote down the answer on a small piece of paper. When he looked at it, Samir felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He had never shown his work to anyone before. Could it really be correct? He had to try. Samir dressed quickly and walked toward the university. The morning sun made the tall buildings shine. Students and professors passed by, rushing to their classes and research. Samir held his paper tightly. He was just a boy, and no one paid much attention to him. But inside, he felt confident. He had solved the impossible puzzle. As he entered the cafeteria, he saw a young professor named Mr. Lee drinking coffee and reading a notebook. Samir approached him carefully. "Excuse me, "Sir, I think I have the solution to the puzzle," he said politely. Mr. Lee looked up, surprised. "You? A student?" he asked. "I am not a student here yet. I just noticed something others missed," Samir replied quietly. Mr. Lee took the paper and began to read. His eyes widened. He double-checked every step. Then he smiled broadly. This is correct. How did you see it?" Samir simply shrugged. "I just looked carefully and tried to see the small details," he said. Word spread quickly through the cafeteria. Professors gathered around, astonished. A janitor's son had solved the puzzle that had stumped the greatest minds. Harvard had never seen anything like it. Samir stood quietly, not seeking attention. But inside, he felt proud. He had proven that careful observation and patience could be stronger than experience and degrees. For the first time, the world of Harvard looked at him not as a janitor's son, but as someone with a unique mind capable of extraordinary thinking. After the news of the puzzle spread, Harvard was full of excitement and tension. Professors whispered to each other in the halls. Students crowded into study rooms to discuss theories. Teams worked late into the night, trying new methods. Yet the puzzle remained unsolved. Many began to feel frustrated. They had years of education and experience, but the solution seemed impossible to find. Meanwhile, Samir returned to his small home. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the evening. He placed the puzzle paper carefully on his desk. He had already spent some time looking at it the night before, but now he wanted to study it properly. He picked up his pencil and began to write. Unlike the professors, Samir did not panic at the complexity. He did not try to use every formula he had learned. Instead, he focused on patterns and small clues. He looked at the numbers slowly, circling the ones that seemed unusual. He drew lines between symbols, connecting ideas in ways that were not obvious. Hours passed as he worked. Samir's mind moved quickly, but he remained calm. Each step brought him closer to understanding the puzzle. Sometimes he paused to rest, staring out of the window at the quiet street. The world seemed ordinary, but in his mind, the puzzle came alive. His father entered the room quietly. "You have been at this for hours," he said. "Are you sure it is safe to keep working so long?" Samir smiled. "I am fine, Dad. I think I am learning something new every minute." His father nodded and left the room, knowing that his son had a special talent. He had seen Samir solve problems that even older children could not. He had seen him pay attention to details that others missed. He knew that Samir's mind was different in a good way. As the night grew darker, Samir noticed a small detail in the puzzle that he had overlooked before. It was a tiny repetition in the numbers. Most people would not have seen it because it was hidden among many other symbols. Samir's eyes widened as he realized it might be the key to solving the puzzle. He carefully wrote notes beside the pattern, connecting it to other parts of the puzzle. Slowly, a picture began to form in his mind. The solution was not about memorizing formulas or using complicated methods. It was about understanding the logic behind the puzzle and noticing what others ignored. At one point, Samir stopped and rubbed his eyes. He had been working for hours, but he felt no tiredness. His excitement gave him energy. "This is it," he whispered to himself. "I can see it now." He picked up a fresh sheet of paper and began to write the solution step by step. He double-checked every line and calculation. Each connection made sense. Each number and symbol fit perfectly. For the first time, he felt confident that he might have the correct answer. The next morning, Harvard was in chaos. Professors gathered in groups, discussing their failures. "I do not understand," one said. "We tried every method, but nothing works." Another professor shook his head. "Maybe the puzzle is too clever for human minds. Perhaps it was designed to be unsolvable." Samir, on the other hand, walked to the university calmly. He had the solution in his hand. He did not care about the attention he might get. He only cared about testing his answer. He entered the university cafeteria, where students and professors were eating breakfast and talking about the puzzle. He spotted Mr. Lee, the young professor who had been kind to him before. Samir approached him carefully. "Excuse me, sir," Samir said politely. "I think I have the solution to the puzzle." Mr. Lee looked at him, surprised. "You? But you are just a boy," he said. "Are you sure?" "I am not a student here yet," Samir replied. "But I noticed something that others missed." "Please check it." Mr. Lee took the paper and studied it. His eyes moved quickly across the numbers and symbols. He checked each step carefully. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. This is correct," he said, almost in disbelief. Samir nodded quietly. "I just looked carefully," he said. "I did not try to make it too complicated." Word spread quickly through the cafeteria. Professors and students gathered around. They looked at Samir in surprise and admiration. Harvard's finest minds had struggled for weeks, but a boy from a small house near the university had solved the puzzle in a few hours. Samir felt a mix of pride and humility. He did not shout or boast. He only felt happy that he had understood something that others could not. The young professor, Mr. Lee, patted his shoulder. "You have a remarkable mind, Samir. You see things differently. That is a talent few people have." Samir smiled. He remembered his father's words, "Son, never give up on your curiosity. Every puzzle has an answer if you are willing to look carefully." He realized that night that those words were true. His curiosity and patience had helped him succeed where others had failed. The day had begun with chaos and doubt at Harvard. By the afternoon, it was filled with wonder and excitement. Everyone talked about the janitor's son who had solved the impossible puzzle. Samir's journey had just begun, but already he had proven that intelligence was not only about degrees and experience. It was also about observation, patience, and the courage to try. The moment Mr. Lee confirmed that Samir's solution was correct, news spread like wildfire across Harvard. Professors hurried to see the young boy who had solved a puzzle that had stumped even the smartest minds. Students whispered excitedly, trying to catch a glimpse of him. Samir remained calm, holding his small piece of paper tightly, not yet fully realizing what had happened. For weeks, Harvard had been full of tension. The puzzle was considered impossible. Teams of scholars had worked late nights, trying every method they knew. Some had even given up hope. Yet here was Samir, a boy who was not even a student, standing quietly among them with the correct solution in his hands. The professors were curious and a little confused. One of them, Professor Hammond, asked, "How did you find this solution, Samir? We have tried every method and every formula we know." Samir looked up at the tall man and smiled. "I just looked carefully. I noticed something small that others missed. I connected it step by step." Professor Hammond shook his head in disbelief. A detail so small could make the puzzle so simple? Incredible. Word reached the university president. He was a kind man with a thoughtful face, and he wanted to meet the boy who had astonished Harvard. That afternoon, Samir was invited to a meeting in the president's office. The room was filled with bright sunlight and shelves of old books. The president shook Samir's hand warmly and said, "Your observation and patience are remarkable. You remind us that intelligence is not only measured by degrees, but by curiosity and persistence." Samir felt a little nervous, but he answered politely, "Thank you, sir. I like puzzles. I think every problem has an answer if you look carefully." The president smiled. "You are wise beyond your years, Samir. We would like to give you a special opportunity to learn here at Harvard." Meanwhile, news reporters had arrived. Cameras flashed and microphones pointed toward Samir as he walked through the university halls. Everyone wanted to hear from the boy who had solved the impossible puzzle. Students crowded around him, asking questions, while professors still shook their heads in surprise. Despite the attention, Samir remained humble. He did not boast about his achievement. He only explained how he had worked slowly, paying attention to every detail. Sometimes the simplest solution is hidden in what people ignore, he said quietly. Back at his home, Samir's father watched the news on the small television. His eyes were filled with pride. He had always known that Samir was special, but seeing his son recognized by the entire university made him smile. "You see, son," he said when Samir returned home, "your patience and careful thinking have brought you here. Never forget the power of observing carefully." Samir nodded. "I will, Dad. I just wanted to understand the puzzle. I never expected so much attention." Over the next few days, Harvard organized a special session to celebrate Samir's achievement. Professors, students, and even alumni gathered in the large hall. Samir was invited to speak. Standing on the stage, he looked around at the audience. "I learned something important," he said. "Even the hardest problem can be solved if we pay attention and do not give up. Curiosity and patience are stronger than we sometimes think." The applause was loud and long. Many professors were impressed by the boy's wisdom. They realized that intelligence is not only about studying for years or memorizing formulas. Sometimes, a fresh perspective can see what experience cannot. Samir's achievement also inspired students. Many young learners began to explore puzzles with more curiosity and less fear of failure. They realized that even a small mind, if focused and patient, could achieve extraordinary results. Despite all the fame, Samir continued to live simply. He returned to his small home and continued solving puzzles. Each day, he learned something new and practiced careful observation. He also helped his father with small chores, never forgetting where he came from. One afternoon, as he walked back from the university, a young student approached him. "Samir," she said shyly, "I tried the puzzle myself, but I could not solve it. Can you teach me your method?" Samir smiled. "Of course. The key is to notice small details. Don't rush. Take one step at a time. Patience is very important." The student nodded eagerly, and soon, Samir was surrounded by other students who wanted to learn from him. The boy who had solved the impossible puzzle became a teacher in his own small way. By the end of the week, the entire campus knew Samir's story. Harvard had witnessed a rare moment when a young mind, humble and careful, outshone even the best minds in the world. The professors still studied and worked on puzzles, but now, they remembered the lesson Samir had shown them: sometimes, simplicity and attention are the most powerful tools. That evening, Samir returned home, placed the puzzle solution carefully in his drawer, and sat quietly. He thought about the journey so far. He felt proud, but he also felt curious. He knew this was only the beginning of many puzzles and challenges he would face in life. Samir's mind was ready, and Harvard's world had already started to change. The boy who looked closely and never gave up had shown that brilliance could appear where no one expected it. By the next morning, the news of Samir's achievement had reached every corner of Harvard. Professors and students were still talking about the janitor's son who had solved the impossible puzzle. Some were amazed, some were curious, and a few were skeptical. They wanted to understand how a boy with no formal training at Harvard could find the answer so quickly. Samir, however, remained calm. He continued his daily routine, waking early to help his father before heading to the university. He did not mind the attention, but he focused more on learning than on praise. That day, Mr. Lee, the young professor who had first seen Samir's solution, invited him to the main lecture hall. Many professors were gathered there, still discussing the puzzle. Samir felt nervous as he walked through the tall doors, but he held his head high. "Samir," Mr. Lee said, "everyone here wants to understand how you solved the puzzle. Would you like to explain it?" Samir nodded politely. He stepped forward and placed his small notes on the table. "I looked carefully at the puzzle," he began. "I noticed small details that repeated in a way that most people ignored. Then I connected them step by step." A senior professor named Dr. Reynolds frowned slightly. "But you are only a boy. How could you see what experienced mathematicians could not?" Samir smiled gently. "I do not know, sir. I just did not rush. I tried to understand, not to impress anyone. I think that is why I saw it." The professors whispered to each other. Some were impressed by his humility. Others were amazed by the simplicity of his method. They began to realize that sometimes, careful observation and patience could be more powerful than years of formal study. After the lecture hall meeting, the university president called Samir to his office. The office was large and filled with books and certificates. The president shook Samir's hand warmly and said, "You have reminded all of us of an important lesson. Intelligence is not only about knowledge but about curiosity, observation, and persistence. Harvard is proud to have you here." Samir bowed politely. "Thank you, sir. I am happy to help. I only wanted to solve the puzzle and learn." Meanwhile, reporters had gathered outside the university. Cameras flashed, and microphones were pointed toward Samir. Students crowded around him, eager to hear his story. "How did you solve the puzzle?" one reporter asked. "It was impossible for most of us." Samir answered simply, "I looked carefully. I noticed details others ignored. Then I connected the steps slowly. Patience is very important." The reporters were impressed. They wrote stories that evening, calling him the unexpected hero of Harvard. Headlines praised the boy who had solved the impossible puzzle, and the story spread far beyond the university. Back at his small home, Samir's father watched the news with pride. "Son," he said, "you have shown everyone that thinking carefully matters more than anything. Never forget that." Samir smiled. "I will, Dad. I will continue learning and solving puzzles." That afternoon, students began to seek Samir's advice. A group of young learners approached him with questions about the puzzle. They wanted to understand his method. Samir patiently explained, showing them how to notice small patterns and how to connect ideas step by step. As he taught them, Samir realized something important. Learning was not just about solving puzzles for fame. It was about sharing knowledge and helping others think differently. The students listened carefully, inspired by the boy who had solved what even the best minds could not. The professors also began to learn from Samir. They asked him to explain his observations in detail. Many of them admitted that they had overlooked simple details because they were focused on complex methods. Samir's approach reminded them to slow down and think clearly. By evening, Harvard's atmosphere had changed. The impossible puzzle had been solved, but more importantly, the university had learned a new lesson. Brilliance could come from anywhere. A young boy from a small home could inspire even the most experienced scholars. Samir returned home, tired but happy. He helped his father with small chores and then sat quietly at his desk. He opened his books and began working on a new puzzle. His mind was full of curiosity and excitement. He knew that challenges would continue to come, and he was ready for each one. That night, as he looked out the window at the quiet street, Samir thought about the journey so far. He had stepped into a world of scholars and challenges, yet he remained himself. He remembered his father's advice: patience, observation, and curiosity were the keys to understanding. Harvard had recognized him, but Samir knew that learning and discovery were more important than fame. He felt proud, but he also felt ready for more. The puzzle had been solved, but his journey had only just begun. The next day, everyone at Harvard still talked about the janitor's son. Students discussed his methods, professors reconsidered their teaching, and the story inspired young minds everywhere. Samir's simple approach had changed the way people thought. Harvard had learned an unforgettable lesson from a boy who looked closely and never gave up. The news of Samir's achievement continued to spread across Harvard and beyond. Students in every hall were talking about the janitor's son who had solved a puzzle that had stumped the greatest minds. Professors whispered in offices, still amazed at how a young boy could see what they had missed. Even alumni who had once studied the puzzle themselves were eager to learn about Samir's method. The university decided to hold a special ceremony to recognize Samir's accomplishment. The largest hall was filled with students, faculty, and visitors. Banners hung on the walls, and the air buzzed with excitement. Everyone wanted to see the boy who had captured Harvard's attention. Samir arrived quietly, holding his notes. He was nervous, but he stood tall. The president of Harvard stepped forward and addressed the crowd. Today, we honor a young mind who has reminded us all of an important lesson. Intelligence is not only measured by degrees or years of study. It is measured by curiosity, observation, and persistence. Samir, your achievement has inspired us all. The audience applauded, some rising to their feet. Samir felt a mixture of pride and shyness. He stepped forward and spoke. Thank you, sir. I am happy to help. I love puzzles, and I believe every problem has a solution if we look carefully. I only tried to see the details that others missed. The crowd listened attentively. Students were amazed that someone their age could accomplish such a feat. Professors nodded, realizing that brilliance could come from anywhere, not only from years of experience. Samir's words were simple, but they carried a powerful message. After the ceremony, reporters crowded around Samir. Cameras flashed as they asked questions. How did you solve the puzzle so quickly? One reporter asked. Samir replied calmly, I looked carefully. I noticed small patterns and connected them step by step. I did not rush. Patience is very important. The reporters were impressed. Headlines appeared in newspapers and online news sites. Words like genius, unexpected hero, and Harvard astonished filled the articles. Samir's story spread far beyond the university. People everywhere admired his intelligence, humility, and patience. Despite all the attention, Samir remained humble. He returned to his small home, helped his father with chores, and continued working on new puzzles. Fame did not change his daily routine. He remembered the advice his father had always given him: stay humble, work hard, and never stop learning. Soon, Harvard offered Samir a special scholarship. He could study alongside the professors who had once doubted him. This opportunity opened new doors. Samir accepted it with gratitude. He was eager to learn, not for fame, but to challenge himself and grow. At the university, students sought his guidance. Many wanted to learn how he approached puzzles and problems. Samir taught them patiently. He explained the importance of observing details, thinking carefully, and not giving up. His method was simple, yet effective. It inspired young minds to believe in themselves. Professors also learned from Samir. They realized that sometimes, their experience made them overlook simple solutions. They began to value curiosity and fresh perspectives more than they had before. Harvard had changed because of one boy who looked at the world differently. One day, Mr. Lee invited Samir to a meeting with a group of young researchers. Samir, he said, your approach is remarkable. We would like you to work with us on new puzzles and experiments. Your fresh ideas could help us discover new things. Samir smiled. I would be happy to help, he replied. He knew this was another step in his journey, another way to learn and grow. At home, his father watched quietly as Samir explained his new projects. I am proud of you, son, he said softly. You are not only talented but also kind and humble. That is rare. Samir nodded. I want to use what I know to help others, Dad. I do not want to just be famous. I want to learn and teach. In the following weeks, Samir became a symbol of inspiration. Students and teachers alike admired him. People from other schools and communities visited Harvard to meet him. They wanted to learn from his simple and careful methods. Samir welcomed everyone politely, showing that knowledge could be shared with patience and humility. Through it all, Samir never forgot where he came from. He remained close to his father, helped his family, and continued to explore puzzles for the joy of learning. He had gained recognition and opportunities, but he valued curiosity and observation more than fame. By the end of the year, Harvard had changed in subtle ways. Professors encouraged students to think carefully and observe patterns. Students approached problems with patience and curiosity. Samir's story reminded everyone that genius could come from unexpected places. As he sat in his small room that evening, Samir looked at the puzzle he had solved months ago. He felt proud, but also excited for the future. Many challenges awaited, and he was ready. Harvard had given him a chance, but his own curiosity had brought him this far. Samir understood that recognition was only part of the journey. True learning came from patience, careful observation, and a desire to understand. He smiled, knowing that his story had just begun, and many adventures and puzzles awaited him in the years to come. After months of attention and recognition, Samir's life began to change in many ways. Harvard had welcomed him as a special student, offering access to the university's libraries, laboratories, and lectures. Samir was excited but also careful. He wanted to learn as much as he could, not just for fame, but for the joy of discovery. Every morning, he woke early to help his father around the house before heading to campus. His father always reminded him, "Remember, son, talent is nothing without humility. Keep your mind open and always stay kind." Samir smiled and nodded. He carried those words in his heart. At Harvard, Samir quickly adapted to the new environment. Professors were impressed by his curiosity and willingness to explore ideas. Students were curious and sometimes nervous to work with him, but Samir always greeted everyone with a smile. He never acted superior, even though many people admired him. One day, Mr. Lee invited Samir to join a special research team. The team worked on challenging mathematical and logical problems. Samir felt nervous at first. These were experienced students and young researchers. But he reminded himself of his father's advice and focused on observing patterns carefully. During the first meeting, the team faced a problem that none of the researchers could solve. Samir quietly wrote notes on a piece of paper, connecting ideas step by step. After a few minutes, he raised his hand and explained his approach. The team followed his reasoning and realized that his method led directly to the solution. Everyone was amazed. The researchers looked at Samir with newfound respect. They realized that his careful observation and simple thinking could help them in ways they had not considered. Professor Hammond, who had doubted Samir before, said, "Your perspective is truly remarkable. You have taught us something valuable today." Samir felt happy, but he remained humble. "I am glad I could help," he said. "I only tried to look carefully and notice details." Over the following weeks, Samir's role in the research team grew. He became known for finding creative solutions to difficult problems. Professors consulted him for ideas, and students sought his advice on assignments. Despite his busy schedule, Samir never forgot to spend time learning on his own. He continued exploring puzzles, reading books, and practicing careful observation. Outside the classroom, Samir's story inspired many students. They began to believe that even small steps and careful thinking could lead to great achievements. Students who were once shy or afraid of challenges now tried new problems with confidence. Samir's success showed them that curiosity and patience were more important than age or experience. One afternoon, Mr. Lee invited Samir to a meeting with the university president and several senior professors. They discussed a new project that could change the way Harvard approached learning. The project focused on teaching students to observe details carefully, think logically, and solve problems step by step. Samir was asked to help design the program. Samir felt excited. He realized that this was a chance to help many students learn in the same way he had discovered. He suggested exercises, small puzzles, and observation games that encouraged careful thinking. The professors listened carefully and appreciated his simple yet effective ideas. Back at home, Samir shared the news with his father. "Dad, I will help create a program at Harvard. We can teach students to think carefully and solve problems step by step." His father smiled proudly. "Son, you are not only learning yourself, but you are helping others. That is true success." As the weeks passed, Samir balanced his studies, research, and the new teaching program. He learned about advanced concepts in mathematics, logic, and science, but he never forgot to keep things simple and understandable. He helped his fellow students, guided younger learners, and shared his methods with patience. Despite his busy life, Samir remained grounded. He remembered the quiet nights when he first solved the puzzle at home. He remembered the encouragement of his father and the feeling of discovering something new. That memory reminded him that success was not only about recognition, but about curiosity, learning, and sharing knowledge. By the end of the year, Samir had grown in confidence and skill. Harvard had not only recognized his talent but had given him a platform to help others. Students were learning in new ways, inspired by his story and methods. Professors were adjusting their teaching, realizing the value of patience and observation. Samir looked forward to the future with hope and determination. He knew that many challenges awaited him, but he was ready. His curiosity had brought him this far, and it would continue to guide him. He had learned that true success came from learning, helping others, and never forgetting the small details that could make a big difference. That evening, as he sat at his desk with a new puzzle, Samir smiled. Harvard had given him opportunities, but his own curiosity had created them. His journey was far from over, and he was excited for every discovery, every challenge, and every lesson that lay ahead. Years had passed since Samir first solved the impossible puzzle. Harvard had changed in many ways, inspired by the boy who had shown that careful observation and patience could outshine even years of experience. Samir had grown into a young man, still humble, still curious, and still eager to learn. Despite all his achievements, Samir never forgot his roots. He lived simply, often returning to his small home to help his father. He remembered the nights he had stayed awake, studying puzzles and discovering patterns that others had missed. Those nights had taught him that curiosity and patience were more valuable than fame or recognition. At Harvard, Samir had become a respected student and a mentor to younger learners. He worked on advanced projects, helping professors and students alike. Yet he remained approachable, always willing to explain his ideas in a simple way. Many students who had once been afraid of challenging problems now approached him with questions, eager to learn from his methods. One day, Samir was asked to speak at a special seminar. The hall was filled with students, teachers, and visitors from other schools. Cameras were set up, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Samir stepped onto the stage calmly. He looked around at the audience and began to speak. "Curiosity is more important than knowledge alone," he said. "Patience is more important than speed. Every problem has an answer if we are willing to observe carefully and try step by step. Do not be afraid to look at small details. Do not be afraid to try again if something seems difficult." The audience listened in silence, many nodding in agreement. Students whispered to each other, inspired by the simple truth in Samir's words. Professors smiled, remembering how one boy had changed the way they thought about teaching and learning. After the seminar, many visitors approached Samir. Some were young students who dreamed of becoming scientists or mathematicians. Some were teachers seeking ways to improve their lessons. Samir welcomed everyone politely, showing them how to approach problems carefully. He used small puzzles and simple examples, helping others see that learning was not about showing off knowledge but about understanding. Samir also continued his research. He worked with teams on projects that explored new ideas in mathematics, logic, and science. His careful observation often led to discoveries that others had overlooked. Yet he never became arrogant or proud. He treated every question as a new opportunity to learn, and every challenge as a chance to think carefully. Back at home, Samir's father watched him with pride. "Son, you have accomplished so much, yet you remain kind and humble. That is rare and special." "I learned from you, Dad," Samir replied. "You taught me patience, honesty, and curiosity. Fame and recognition are good, but understanding and helping others are better." Over time, Samir became a symbol of inspiration for students everywhere. His story was told in classrooms, libraries, and online platforms. People admired not only his talent but also his humility. They learned that intelligence could come from anywhere, and that a simple, careful mind could achieve extraordinary results. Harvard began using Samir's methods in classrooms. Teachers encouraged students to notice small details, think logically, and solve problems step by step. Students who had once struggled now approached challenges with confidence. Samir had shown that curiosity, patience, and careful observation could create new opportunities for everyone. One afternoon, a group of young students visited Samir's home. They had heard his story and wanted to learn from him. Samir welcomed them warmly. He showed them puzzles, helped them observe patterns, and explained how to connect ideas step by step. The children listened carefully, inspired by his words and example. As he watched the young learners, Samir realized that his journey had come full circle. He had started as a boy who loved puzzles, solving problems quietly at home. Now, he was helping others discover the joy of learning. His achievements were important, but the lessons he shared were even more valuable. That evening, Samir sat by his window, looking at the quiet street outside. He thought about the journey that had begun with a simple puzzle and a moment of curiosity. He smiled, knowing that he had learned more than anyone else about patience, observation, and the power of trying. Samir understood that true success was not about fame, money, or awards. It was about learning, helping others, and never forgetting the small details that could change everything. He had proven that even a boy from a humble home could make a difference in the world. As night fell, Samir closed his notebook and prepared for the next day. He knew there would always be new puzzles, new questions, and new challenges. But he was ready, confident that curiosity, patience, and careful observation would guide him through every discovery. Harvard, the students, and even the world had learned an unforgettable lesson: brilliance could come from the most unexpected places. And sometimes, the simplest mind could see what the smartest could not. Samir had shown that with humility, persistence, and curiosity, anyone could achieve extraordinary things.